Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. We're live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and I appreciate you watching, whether that's live or after the fact. What we're going to be doing right now is talking about an initiative petition. It's called IP28, or the PEACE Act. What PEACE Act stands for is People for the Elimination of Animal Cruelty Exemptions. So this is a push to put something onto the ballot to go to voters in November in the state of Oregon. Essentially, what it would do would ban all hunting, all animal agriculture, fishing, and many other things associated with animals. We wanted to find out more about this initiative, the meaning behind it, and the person who's really leading the charge, the chief initiative person for this. And that is David Michelson, who we're going to speak to in this interview to start off. I want you to know that we also spoke to the Oregon Hunters Association, and so we will have their response coming up as well. But to start off, here it is. This is David and his talk about this initiative and why it came to be.
Yeah, happy to share about how it came to fruition, and thank you again for having me. The initiative started because I was working as a paid circulator back in 2020, and at the same time I was doing a research project for a school class that looked at our animal cruelty laws. And while doing that, I realized that in Oregon, animal abuse is defined as the intentional, knowing, and reckless injury of an animal, which is a pretty broad definition at first. And I was curious, why then, when we intentionally slaughter animals, when we intentionally hunt them, experiment on them, why were those not covered under that definition? And the reason is that there's another state law that says the following list of activities would be exempt from our animal cruelty laws. And it became pretty clear to me that if you just amended that law, made a pretty simple change, it would have a very big impact. It would extend the same cruelty protections our dogs and cats already have to all animals statewide, which would then ban slaughter, hunting, experimentation under that definition of abuse. So because it seemed pretty straightforward, I thought I'm really curious where this would go. Submitted the initiative originally for the 2022 election cycle. It was just myself starting out. But I slowly got a smaller group of people involved, and then we tried again for 2024, got a little bit more support, and then tried again for 2026. And so we've definitely been building over the past 5-6 years.
And to that extent, I guess, to ask about the building toward that, can you let us know how many signatures you have now and what would be needed to take this to the next level?
Yeah, we have about 105,000 signatures right now that we've collected. The legal number is 117,173, but you do need to submit enough extra because some will always get thrown out for every campaign. Usually people either just aren't actually registered to vote, but they thought they were, or some are illegible, unfortunately, things like that. So we are going to try to collect more than that, but we are close at least to that threshold number.
Talking about the initiative itself and some of the things that you brought up there, what would your response be to some of the things that could happen with an outright ban of, let's say, hunting, for example, talking about it to that extent? Do you see any issues there with potential ecological problems or even overpopulation, say, of deer, elk herds, things like that?
So with the population specifically, or actually, I kind of want to take a step back and talk hunting more broadly.
Okay.
Our campaign recognizes that individuals right now are trying to meet a variety of needs that they have using hunting as a strategy. Those needs in some cases are sustenance, some cases are attempting to protect the environment or protect other species, some cases recreation, some cases cultural practices. The needs themselves, our campaign really wants to acknowledge and find another way of meeting that also meets the needs of animals at the same time. With population in particular, I think that's almost it's one that we talk about quite often. There are other strategies if we want to intervene in wildlife populations. There are non-lethal methods of doing so, some that we've already developed, like the introduction of sterile males into a population or using certain forms of birth control contraceptives. There are probably other non-lethal forms of wildlife management that we could develop or perfect if we took the lethal forms off the table. So we still want the same needs to get met, ours as well as the animals. And right now, using hunting as a strategy as a go-to for all of those things doesn't recognize that those animals have needs and that doesn't value them in the same way that we value our own.
Would just talking about those population control measures, for what would be needed for that, you mentioned the sterilization. Wouldn't that go against what this initiative is kind of about for a part of that?
So this initiative is trying to prevent the intentional, knowing, and reckless injury or killing of an animal. It also prohibits the artificial insemination, masturbation, and impregnation of animals as well. So it would not prohibit us from intervening in the affairs of animals non-lethally or non-injuriously. And I do not currently believe that the forms of birth control, for instance, New York City actually has done this not for wild animals, but for rats. They've replaced poison boxes with birth control boxes, essentially, so that you can lower the population of rats without killing them. And I wouldn't classify that as injury personally. I have a feeling most judges would agree with that interpretation, although I'm not a judge. So our initiative is about finding creative strategies to, again, meet our needs as well as the animals' needs without killing them, without using that as the go-to, which is unfortunately very common in our current world.
To that extent, too, just talking about the initiative itself, looking at, I'm looking at such a wide ban on so many things. It's going to the farming side of things. Can you walk us through, how farming and agriculture, particularly in animal products, would be affected by this?
Yeah, so in Oregon, if this were to pass, it would ban killing animals, including for food. So there would be no more slaughterhouses in Oregon. It would also ban, again, the artificial insemination, which is a very common practice in animal agriculture. So it would have a big impact. The initiative does set up a transition fund to help pay for things like job retraining, income replacement, animal care for those animals who would no longer be killed, ideally. It is another example of we want to really, really empathize with the fact that people in animal agriculture, in slaughterhouse work, they're trying to meet needs for economic stability, for participating in a community, for providing sustenance, ideally. I mean, they really do, I think, want to contribute to others' lives. And we, again, want to find a different strategy for getting those same needs met. There's some great examples of people transitioning from animal agriculture to plant agriculture, particularly with chicken farmers. It's actually interesting that the barns often used in chicken farming can be adapted for mushroom farming, which is a cool example. And again, I think we can continue to develop those strategies if we decided as a society we want to move in that direction.
How would those kinds of transitions be funded?
So the transition fund says, one, it wants the legislature to fund this to the fullest capacity, operational capacity allowable. And it doesn't mandate that the legislature do a specific funding stream. We didn't really want to distract from, if we agree as a society we want to move in this direction, I think we will find a way to do that. So it gives them pretty broad authority to find sources of revenue, although it does state that any current funding used for an activity that would be banned under this law would be redirected to that transition fund. So right now, any funding that would go towards killing animals, to breeding animals, things like that, that money would have to be redirected.
When you look at things like the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and some of the different ways that they are managing habitat rehabilitation, their different various initiatives, a lot of that funding does come from hunting fees, licenses. How would you handle that? And would that be something that they would not be allowed to do, since that could interfere with wildlife?
So they wouldn't be able to authorize hunting, selling hunting licenses, because they couldn't, the state could not authorize an activity that would be illegal. Right now, when I looked through their budget last, and that was actually maybe 2 years ago during the prior election cycle, it looked like a lot of the funding that they were getting through the sales of hunting tags and such were going towards managing hunting grounds and sort of facilitating the activities that they were also getting revenue from. A very small fraction, according to their own budget, goes towards conservation efforts specifically. And the transition fund could be used to continue with conservation efforts. It's explicitly written. So our campaign cares a lot about that. Again, we just want to find a different strategy to meet that same need.
And how would you anticipate this transition taking place? It seems like this would be something that would take some time.
Yeah, so I could answer that one or two ways. I do want to acknowledge that everyone on the campaign is aware it seems very unlikely that 50% of Oregonians are ready right now in 2026 to stop killing animals. We would love it for it to pass, we'll campaign for it to pass, but we are aware that that is unlikely to happen. We are looking at a much longer trajectory. We're inspired a lot by the women's suffrage movement, which used the ballot initiative tactic to get the right to vote. And in Oregon, it took 6 election cycles before it finally passed. And we're not the only state that had that happen. So we want to get on the ballot now. We want to have this conversation and move us in that direction so that by the time it does finally pass, by the time 50% of Oregonians are ready to stop killing animals, I think the world will already look different. I think there will be far less to transition. But in theory, if everyone was so compelled by our campaign in this election cycle, 50% of voters, 50 plus 1, decided to vote for this. According to our Constitution, something has to take at least 30 days to take effect. And so we decided to put in constitutionally the 30-day window, but no more, primarily because we do view this as urgent. We want animals to not be killed. And so there isn't a multi-year process for a transition like there might be in some other forms of animal welfare regulation and such. That said, in Oregon, legislatures are able to adjust initiatives after something is passed, so it would be up to them, I think, to some extent, what that transition would look like.
All right, and what's next then as far as the signatures? So continue to gather those, it sounds like?
Yes, yeah, we have until the end of June to meet the deadline. I think July 2nd is the official deadline. If we get enough signatures, that'll trigger the verification process. And if we end up with over that 117,000, it'll be on the ballot in November.
All right. Well, David, thank you very much for joining us to walk us through this and what the initiative is and informing people about how you see this. And really appreciate your time being here on Fox 12 Now.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
All right, so there we heard, again, David being one of the chief petitioners behind that initiative. And next, we're actually going to be talking to the Oregon Hunters Association. Amy Patrick is going to join me to discuss their side of things and how they feel about this and how it would affect some things that they feel are important for all Oregonians. That's coming up next. We'll be right back with more Fox 12 Now. Everyone, welcome back to Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. Whether you're watching live or after the fact, we appreciate it, and I recommend downloading that Fox 12 Oregon app. This segment is really part 2 of a discussion we're having regarding IP 28, Initiative Petition 28, and which is an act to put something on the ballot in November, or at least an attempt. They have to get enough signatures to make that happen. This is also known as the PEACE Act, and PEACE stands for People for the Elimination of Animal Cruelty Exemptions. So what this initiative would do is ban hunting, ban animals for agriculture, ban a number of different things throughout the state of Oregon associated with animals. We heard from the chief petitioner of this initiative, and that was David Michelson. And so if you want to watch that interview, that will be available for you there on those Fox 12 Oregon apps. But this is coming from someone who opposes this, and that is Amy Patrick from the Oregon Hunters Association. We wanted to find out her stance on this or the hunters' stance really in the state of Oregon. So that's what we have here. Let's go ahead and listen. Joining us here to talk about this. Before we get started talking about IP 28, the PEACE Act, would you mind just telling everybody a little bit about yourself and the organization?
Sure. So my name is Amy Patrick. I am the lobbyist representing Oregon Hunters Association and Oregon Wild Sheep Foundation. I am also a 6th-generation Oregonian. My background is in farming and forestry, so very familiar with all the areas of Oregon that this particular initiative would impact.
And this initiative, for people who don't know, just to clarify for you, it's called the People for the Elimination of Animal Cruelty Exemptions. So this is an initiative petition where they're seeking signatures to get this onto the ballot in November. And should it make it there, it would effectively ban all hunting and animal agriculture in addition to a number of other things in the state. And I think just to start off, I would just like to hand it to you and maybe get your initial response to this petition.
Sure. So this is something that I've actually been following for the last about 5 years since they first came on the scene, I believe in 2021, in their attempt to make the 2022 ballot. So this initiative is pretty far-reaching. I guess I will start there. Not only, would it do the things I think that the proponent is talking about, but the criminalization of hunting, fishing, being able to raise animals for food. Our cattle industry in Oregon is one of the main drivers of our economy. But what this would do is go into the animal abuse statutes and remove exemptions that protect legal and lawful actions from being called animal abuse. One of those would be criminalizing then, with the removal of that exemption, the hunting, fishing, wildlife management, research and education around animals, safe and reasonable handling tactics or handling requirements, all the way down to the ability to trap mice and vermin. So that's, I think, one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot when people talk about this, is that this would affect every Oregonian, all the way down to you would not be allowed to trap mice or rats or anything in your house. So it's very, very far-reaching. I'm not sure that those far-reaching aspects of the petition get talked about often enough.
Certainly covering a lot there with that. When it comes to this, looking at some of the various angles of it and various aspects, I guess talking from a hunter's perspective, what are some of the dangers that you would see of banning hunting outright?
Sure. So hunting is one of the main conservation uses and management uses for our wildlife. So if you were to ban hunting, and fishing is of the same vein, not only are you taking away a really important conservation tool for managing a herd population, respective to available habitat and things like that, you're also taking away a main funding source for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Hunters and anglers and trappers, we are the main driver of ODFW's budget. That's something that the Oregonians, I think, by and large, don't understand, is how ODFW is funded. Historically, the users, hunters, anglers, trappers, we are paying about 55% of the agency's budget. The general fund dollars, which are all of our tax dollars, historically, that's a very low percent of ODFW's budget, around 10%. So predominantly, we, the hunters and anglers, we're the ones that are shouldering the cost of the agency. So the follow on from that is, if you criminalize hunting, fishing, trapping, you are also going to be taking the legs out from underneath ODFW's budget, further decimating wildlife conservation efforts in the state.
And what kind of effect could all of this have economically, just if, from a hunting ban to an agricultural ban for those people that are involved in animal agriculture?
Oh, I think the economic impacts for the state cannot be overstated enough. As I mentioned before, beef is one of our main economic drivers in the state. But when you look at all of the animal agriculture that happens around Oregon, and then you expand that also to take in our coastal regions, where our commercial fisheries and crabbing make up a huge part of our economies as well, the trickle-down effect, again, of this is going to be a loss of economy for the state. And what that means for Oregon is we're already in a time frame where taxes are a big deal right now going on in the state. Trying to balance the budget, the deficit at the Capitol during this short session right now. We're going to see further complications to our economy should this go forward. We're going to see less services and a much tighter budget outlook, which may require more taxation on all of Oregonians to make up for it.
Do you see this as having a chance to pass?
I see this as having a chance to make the ballot, as far as they are on their signatures at this point. I am hopeful that Oregonians will not vote yes on this. I'm hopeful that whether you're in an urban region or a rural region, you understand what makes Oregon great. And part of that is our wildlife, and part of that is our economy that comes from our farming and ranching. And that folks will really, really delve into what this does and how this is going to affect not just in this abstract, so if you're not a hunter or you're not a rancher or a farmer, don't think that this is not going to affect you in your day-to-day life. If you go down to your local farmer's market and that's where you like to buy your local produce or your local meat, that would be no more. You would not be able to do that because we would not be able to raise and sell local beef, lamb, pork at a farmer's market. All of your proteins would now be shipped in from out of state. All the way down to, like I mentioned before, not being able to trap mice or rats in your home. Businesses, restaurants would not be able to do that either. So this is going to have an effect on everyone. I'm really, really hopeful that Oregonians will understand that and vote no on this.
All right, Amy, thank you very much for your time to talk about this. I really appreciate it. Was there anything else that you'd like to add?
I just hope that if this measure makes the ballot, what this will do is drive a huge voter response. I would love to see a large turnout, and again, I'd love to see that turnout protect Oregon's way of life and common sense.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. So hearing from Amy from the Oregon Hunters Association. On our other interview, we heard from David Michelson, who is one of the chief petitioners for this initiative.